Tough day.
Yes.
You have to be on campus for the first 2 years or 1 year?
Okay, it's a little after 5, so we're going to call the meeting to order to be in a timely manner this evening. So with that, I'd like to please ask each member of our leadership team to quickly introduce themselves, what particular function they support, and then we'll move on to recognition of district commissioners and committee members who may be present this evening that also support us by volunteer service. So,
Well, I've been very honored to represent District 2 for the last year. With that, I will probably be moving on, I am definitely moving on to a different kind of activity in the county very soon. And with that, Supervisor Turnbull has made a decision on who my replacement might be. And with
So
that,
I just want to welcome John Razzler to the team. Thank you, John, for stepping out.
All right.
thank you for the opportunity.
and John has been a longstanding member of APAC, and so he has a lot of familiarity with El Dorado Hills and particularly the impacts of growth,
Yeah.
development, whatever, south of Highway 50. So
Right.
welcome, John.
All right, thank you.
And then he's going to be the appointee
Thank you,
for me
thank
on
you,
APEC
George.
too, and he is the vice chair too, I think,
Yes.
on APEC right now.
Multi roles.
Yep.
Very good.
Hot hats.
Robert, for all of your service,
Thank you, John.
and good luck in the new venture. And
Yes.
that will be challenging, I'm sure.
No. Well, the new venture, I will probably begin tomorrow, perhaps, so we will see.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, very good. Okay.
And I'm Mike Lionthal. I chair the public safety portion of the Safe and Healthy Communities.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, Kathy Guerrero. I am the director for First Five El Dorado and the Commission for Youth and Families, and I represent the Healthy Communities Report.
I'm Cindy Munt. I'm Supervisor Heidel's assistant, and I do the community information and outreach for the council.
John Heidel, District 1 Supervisor.
I'm Lawrence Vivato.
I'm John Davey. I'm the chair of the El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee, and we're a group of resident volunteers that reviews proposed development projects in El Dorado Hills, and we provide feedback to the process. And you're still you.
Good evening, John Rassler. Very proud to represent the folks in District 2, made up probably the largest population of seniors in the entire county. And I am also a volunteer ombudsman or advocate for seniors that are in assisted living and memory care, have been for quite a while. So I do want to thank George for at this time anyway, for appointing me to the job. Thank you.
Okay, and it was mentioned before, we do have a vacancy that exists in Thriving Economy, and that will hopefully be filled by our CDAC representative, which is on tomorrow's agenda for approval. So once that's been made, we can go ahead and share that information because it's never given till it's done, right? So I don't want to announce it now and then have something peculiar happen at tomorrow's board meeting, but we'll get that information out as quickly as we can. We talked about strategic innovation and is limited to county employees at this time. And so we'll be reporting, I will be reporting those as I get inputs, but I can tell you I haven't received anything yet. So hopefully they're getting formed and getting started. With that, let's move on then to identifying and appreciating the work that's been done by a lot of other volunteers who serve on various District 1 committees or commissions and or related activities. So Raylene, you want to go ahead and identify yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Raylene Nunn. I'm on the Commission on Aging. I'm John Heidel's appointee for District 1. And I'm also a California Senior Senator.
Very good. And Tita?
Tita Bladen, El Dorado County Commission on Aging, and I'm also on the California Senior Legislature. I'm the senior assembly.
Very good. So we have both of our representatives to the senior legislature here, the senator and the assembly representative. So very good. With that, I don't see anybody else in the audience except we probably ought to recognize Tim White. So Tim, you want to just share with us your role?
All right.
Because you have many, but
yeah. Tim White, right this year, I'm president of the El Dorado Hills Fire Department Board of Directors. I'm also a LAFCO commissioner representing special districts. on the El Dorado County LAFCO. And I also, along with Mr. Raslier, I'm a vice chair on APAC, have been for 6 or 7 years.
Very good. And I don't see anybody on our participants list. So with that, we'll move on to item 2, adoption of the regular meeting agenda. Does anyone on the leadership team have any proposed changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll accept the agenda as being adopted. With that, we'll move on to item 3, public comment. And this is the opportunity we present to anyone in the public who would like to share a concern, ask a question for any item that's not on the agenda. So if you have something you'd like to share with us, a recent event, some concern relative to what's going on, now would be the appropriate time. And we ask for that you voluntarily identify who you are so we can record that in the minutes and then track it therefrom. So is there anyone who'd like to speak? Okay, and do you have a microphone there? You need to make sure that you use one of these microphones. It needs to be green, please. Yeah. And the microphones don't broadcast in the room. It's only for the Zoom participants. So don't expect the amplified voice in the room as a result of this. So.
Okay, my name is Maria White. I'm a resident and we're coming up on 10 years in El Dorado Hills, so I don't feel like a newcomer anymore. But Tim just pointed out that's Greg next to you. And I went, Greg who? So we just had an election. I think it's important that I just point out this person. He's been elected. He's going to be the District 1 supervisor coming up starting in January. And I had no idea who you are or were. So I thought I'd mention that.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Just in case somebody else wanted to talk to him.
Greg, you can share something if you want. It's your choice. Okay.
Flying wall at this point.
All right. The fire hose, right? Yeah, and drinking from the fire hose to put it back into fire service terms. So anyone else in the public who would like to speak on an item not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I think we can move to item 4. And it's my pleasure this evening to introduce Dr. Matthew Minson, who was recently appointed to El Dorado County Public Health Officer. And he's going to discuss some of his past endeavors and the current vision for what will be happening in El Dorado County as things evolve. But I first want to read his bio. And you kind of need to try to take all of this in because it's so broad and so deep all at the same time. It's hard to comprehend the first time you hear it. But Matthew Minson, MD, is the health officer for El Dorado County, an award-winning, best-selling author and inventor who has a storied career in clinical medicine and public service, including holding positions at the local, Texas, and now California State, Maryland, and Texas, and the federal level Health and Human Services, with numerous commendations, including a Secretariat's Commendation Award for leading the creation of the National Health Security Strategy, federal and state awards for emergency and disaster response, and for serving as the Deputy Coordinator for the U.S. government response to the Haiti earthquake. In addition, he has a lengthy deployment portfolio, including a Ground Zero, the Columbia Space Shuttle recovery, and Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, and more. As a USAR and NDMS physician, he is also credentialed as a swift water rescue, a hazmat, and a confined space tech, and has served on the FEMA IST, and is a federal medical special instructor. He's a grad of the Defense Medical Preparedness or Medical Readiness Training Institute, a principal member of the NFPA Committee addressing first responder standards and protections, and has been a White House liaison for biochem and responder protections, as well as federally qualified health center medical director. He serves on the board of Valley Health and resides in El Dorado County with his incredibly wonderful wife, who's with us this evening, Kelly, if I remember right. Is that correct? Yeah, his wife, Kelly. 2 sometimes marginal dogs and 1 elusive cat. You can't herd cats. Don't you understand, right? So with that introduction, Matt, please come up and share with us your thoughts this evening, and welcome to El Dorado County. It's huge.
He's a history buff too.
Oh, and a history buff.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
thank you for that.
Very much so.
Okay, very good. I'm gonna wait while you tee that up. First of all, thank you very much for the introduction. And I just want to say on behalf of Kelly and myself, Thank you so much for the hospitality. I've been not only anticipating it, but been delighted, and it's been affirmed by everybody we've met. People have been so nice to us. They've had open arms. They've welcomed us to the community. Chief, I mean, my interactions at OES with the chief have been great, but with both supervisors, there's been a lot of patience, and I really appreciate it. I would say that of that bio or that intro, the most important part is Kelly. And on that note, when I asked her, I said, how should I speak in order to be really popular with this group? And she said, well, start off by saying, and so in conclusion, but I can't really do that, so.
I like it. No, no.
That's okay, take your time with that. Is it not working? Oh, it doesn't?
No, it
So this is
doesn't.
just for the internet.
So you just have to try to raise your voice a little bit now.
So-
I understand they're getting a new system, but it hasn't arrived.
It's okay.
yet,
So I'm just gonna blow out their ears and project for everybody here. The books that the supervisor was talking about, this might be of interest because I heard a lot of people talking about senior issues and senior representation. My first book was written because I was angry. Kelly was almost killed by a medical mistake, and it wasn't something that was super complicated. It was actually mundanity. It was shift change, and they hadn't paid attention to some orders. And I said, I was really upset about it. I talked to the folks at the hospital, and they said, well, you could write a letter. And I said, I think I can do better than write a letter. So I wrote a book, and I didn't expect anything to come of it, and the book did really well. Most of my readership, my publisher is Texas A&M University Press. They're a good group. They're very civic-minded. But what was interesting about it is that my readership mostly was seniors. And they came back and said, you need to write a book about social issues related to seniors, not just healthcare issues. And that led to the second book. And I have to say, researching that book, getting ready for that subject matter has been not only enlightening, but I think it's made me better as a health officer when it comes time to dealing with people, especially in a county like El Dorado. So I hope that makes sense. But I think that's a thing that has resonated with me when I was hearing the introductions earlier. Oh, good, it's up. I'm going to make this quick because if I talk too long, it's basically a cure for insomnia. So most people don't really know what a health officer is or does. And just a quick show of hands if you know what the health officer is. It's just the guy that comes and yells at you about COVID, except for you. You don't count. You're disqualified. We can go to this next slide, please. It's called different things in different statutes here in the state of California. It's called different things, and every state has it. In Texas, they're called public health authorities. In Maryland, they're the health authority. In California, depending on the statute that you read, you'll see that they're called the local health officer, the county health officer, the public health officer, the health officer, and then probably some other things that they don't put in the statute. The fact is, what their real purpose is, it's okay, we're good.
All right.
Is it giving you fits?
No, we're just trying to get it bigger so people could read it by going to
Oh.
presentation mode, and for some
no,
reason, this doesn't seem to want to convert.
Well, there are
Oh, it's a
60 of us.
PDF, that's why it's not a PowerPoint. Got it, yeah.
There are 60 of us in California, one for each of the 58 counties. 2 cities in the state of California actually have their own. What they do, we can go to the next slide. I think we'll probably be okay with that.
Great, the next slide.
Yeah, I think we can go to the next one. The suspense is killing you, right?
Right.
Because it gets really good at this point. Okay.
There you go.
Basically, the presentation is this. Health officers are created in statute. They're required to be in existence. This goes all the way back. I don't know if you ever saw a television show called Deadwood. It was about Tim Oliphant's character, I forget his name. He was the guy that was a really good quick shot. He didn't want to be the marshal, so he basically became the health officer for the city or the territory of Deadwood. They're there to prevent disease spread. That was it. They were hygiene officers really originally. When there was no plumbing or any of that kind of stuff, that's what those folks did. Those are all the statutes in the Health and Safety Code that call out the responsibilities or the duties of the health officer. And there's a ton of them. In fact, there's 172 altogether. And I've read about half of them. So, and that was enough, believe me. We can go to the next slide. They're also called out in the government code. And that's really where the kind of the authorities that come along with it, mostly the responsibilities come along. There's also applications in the penal code, which is interesting. So things like making sure that certain provisions are in place, are there, certain protections for law enforcement officers actually fall under the heading of the health officer. There's also the California Code of Regulations. I don't really fully understand that one because it's got some very interesting language, and I didn't go to law school, and I'm glad I didn't, but it probably would be helpful if I had looked at that. There's also a call out under the water code, which is very interesting because some of the provisions of safe water consumption and things like contaminants or pesticides fall under that heading as well. So basically what this means is, we can go to the next slide. I have to answer to everybody. I'm somebody that everybody can tell what to do. And I like that because that means that I have some applications, and believe me, they do. We can go to the next slide, please. So health officer's general powers authorize him, her, they to act in uncorporate areas of a county. This is language right straight out of the statute. They can also apply to cities unless the cities don't want to do this and have their own health officer. It's generally pretty cost prohibitive, so most counties will have the county health officer. That's why there's 60 of them in the state of California, and only 2 cities have opted to do it. And they had unique considerations. We can go to the next one. This is day-to-day for me. I'm a subject matter expert in terms of things like health, medical, some of the first responder protections that we talked about, and some other things, to both the executives of the county, but also to the Board of Supervisors if there's a specific question that would require an action that would take place that had some health or medical element to it. Does that make sense? And am I talking loud enough because my voice is starting? Okay, good. There's also issues of disease spread, and I've got kind of some things that have been abbreviated, so I'll just talk about them. Tuberculosis. The state of California, this is really disturbing, but the state of California issued a document in December of last year and said that we'd seen a 23% rise in the incidence of active tuberculosis. It's not just tuberculosis where somebody's infected, but that means the person actually is contagious with tuberculosis. We're seeing that here. No place is really kind of immune to it. So it's a big deal. We have to track it. It's not a disease that's easy to just pinpoint and say they've got it, let's treat it, let's go on. Tuberculosis treatment takes anywhere from 6 months to a year, and it requires that the individual be observed taking the medication. The reason that we do that is because drug-resistant TB, which could develop, is extremely dangerous. And it's a threat to public safety. So it's part of the duties of what we do. And the health department has nurses that actually observe this therapy, but the health officer ultimately has responsibility. So that's part of it. There's also immunizations. There's, chemical, biological, rad, nuclear, explosive things that go on. And all of those have application to the health officer, because anytime any of those bad things happen, somebody gets sick or injured or hurt. And so there's things that have to be filed by the health officer. There's reporting that takes place, and sometimes there's an action that takes place by the health officer, if that makes sense to everyone. Good. I'm just checking my modulation too, so we're good with that. Rabies. I'm happy to tell you, nothing much has really changed with rabies, but the bad news is nothing much has changed with rabies. The state health officer issued a letter about 6 weeks ago that said all counties in California are endemic for rabies. Now, it's nothing to get too excited about. I think everybody knows that. It's mostly bats and skunks and things like that. But we want to make sure we've undertaken a campaign in El Dorado County to talk with both the hospitals as well as our partners in non-traditional roles like animal services to make sure that all of that has been covered and that those folks are all on the same page. So we're using the same templates, protocols, and whatnot. I'm very pleased to say that it looks like we're all doing a pretty good job with that, although occasionally there are investigations that have to take place. Finally, there's vital statistics. That's birth and death records. And I like to say, I have to sign them all. And I like to say, nobody dies in El Dorado County unless I say so, but that's just a little overinflated. We can go to the next slide. My bio kind of talked about this, but I'll just point out a couple of things really quickly. The pictures that are in there are all, the one on the far right is from Ground Zero. That was a particularly poignant situation for me because first responder protections were not actually, addressed there on the ground. They said you were safe 50 feet from the pile if you took your gear off. Respiratory protection, PPE, everything could come off 50 feet from the pile. That was clearly untrue. You could see the air sparkle. So we knew that wasn't right. I and another doctor grabbed our some NIOSH gear and actually got samples. That data became the foundation of the World Trade Center Health Registry, which still protects the guys that were there at Ground Zero, as well as the folks that live nearby. I'm really proud of that, but that was a tough detail for me. But it led me to kind of a career that said, you know, you're looking out for people, and even if you have a little discomfort in it, you do the right thing and you'll be all right. The middle picture is actually from Katrina. That's the LaFawn Nursing Home. And I was a much younger guy, and my back was much younger in those days too. The top picture in the left is actually from Katrina. That was, I was unaware that picture was taken. They had an embedded photographer with us that they hadn't told us about from FEMA, and she took that picture, and about 2 years later, somebody said, hey, this is really great. You should take a look at it. And I'm really proud to have that in my office now. The National Fire Protection Association, I joined the Committee 470, which addresses first responder protections, and that I've been proudly serving on that since 2003. And I'm happy to say, and I'll just share with the group, that what we're now doing is we're actually looking at things like health registries for not just these massive events, but if you have something like a swiftwater rescue, right? And it runs past an area where there was, you know, a storage facility, and it might even be an old Superfund site or something like that. If those guys get into that water, we want to make sure that we capture that incident so that if 5 years from now those guys are getting Parkinson's, that we've actually got some documentation to protect them. And I think that that's catching on, and I'm really proud of the kind of the work we're doing with that. So we can go to the next slide because I can't stand looking at me any longer. Okay. I don't believe in coming empty-handed, so I brought these links are actually pretty good, and I'm going to leave the presentation behind. One thing that's interesting here is that there's a program called Spend Smart, Eat Smart. And for seniors in particular, I included this in the book because I was so impressed with it. Iowa State University created a program from a USDA grant. And what they do is they actually list nutrition-dense menu items that people can get, and they have the amount of pennies or under $1, they're all under $1, for these entrees that you can make at home. And what they do is they provide really nutrition-dense healthy food, and I thought, well, that just sounds terrible, because anytime somebody tells me it's nutrition dense and healthy, it's going to taste terrible, right? So Kelly and I decided to try it out, and I was shocked that some of it was really fantastic, and we've continued to kind of incorporate it into what we do. So that link takes you to Iowa State's site. I blast that out as much as I possibly can, because you never know who's got income challenges. And I think it's always good, and it's not just for old people, which is kind of what people were tagging me with. It's actually for families and anybody else that might have to use it. So that's there, those links. I'm going to leave this behind, and you guys can address that if you want to. Another thing that might be useful is the Mail Back Services program here in California. If you're acquainted with it, raise your hand, and I won't bore you with the details. But this is actually pretty good. If you have someone who's a diabetic and they're homebound and they cannot necessarily get out, then that individual might benefit from the fact that if you're subscribing to this program, they can send you what's essentially, you know, the red boxes that we see that we put, you know, a used needle or something like that in. You get it at your house, you fill it up, you screw the lid back on. It has a lock that clicks. It has the postage already paid. You simply put it in the mail. It goes back to the state, and they dispose of it in a reasonable fashion. And it's really only for people who have documented medical problems and limited mobility. But it's actually a pretty good program. And so I think we can go to the next slide, because that's all the freebies I have tonight. And I'll thank you very much for your attention. And nobody fell asleep, and I'm stunned. So thank you very much.
Questions from anybody on the leadership team? One?
No, I would just say we're real happy to have you around. One of the things about emergency types events is you need a public health doctor that can make decisions quickly with an experience base that Dr. Minson has. We've already seen benefits of that on, you know, the measles issue with just some aggressive, I would say, protections for your local first responders. So it's really appreciated. And we're happy to have you around. Your experience base can be very helpful to the county.
Chief, thank you. I know this isn't going to the room. Chief, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. I don't think you deserve any less, quite candidly. The folks that we talked to, both on the law enforcement front, what the chief is referring to is that during the recent measles exposure that took place in Sacramento at Davis, we got our information very late. You have 72 hours to do certain things to protect a person when they've been exposed to measles. We got our information with probably about 2 of those days already burned. And when we got the information midday on Friday, that left us with 7.5 hours to act. So we realized that the best way to get you talked about herding cats. The American people are like herding cats. You can't make them do anything. But if you communicate clearly and they understand that their equity is involved in this thing and they've got skin in the game and we're all doing the right thing and trying to work together, then they will often cooperate. And that's your best shot at success. And in this case, it worked out. The notice went out. The folks notified us. We were notified that we had 3 people in El Dorado County. We really had 5. And 2 of them were supposed to be hospitalized. Only 1 was. One lady was post-surgical. She came by the health department. The staff stayed until 8:30 at night that night. We found out she was immunocompromised. We needed to get her over to Marshall to get immunoglobulin administered because she would have really not done well and potentially could have died. It worked out fine, but I have to say, we went through a period here recently. And in fact, starting, I guess it ends on April 3rd, we'll be out of the woods with 2 incubatory cycles. I'm optimistic, wherever the wood is, I'll knock on it. The bottom line is, our partners, this really wasn't me. This was a conjoined effort between SO, myself, the different police departments, fire and EMS. EMS was great in getting the information out. We provided them the notifications and they did what they needed to do. We then took daily calls for a while and basically gave updates just to make sure if anybody had anything going on, we were aware of it. I'm very proud of the way it worked out. I think it speaks highly to the situation and the organizations you have that are protecting people, and I'm delighted just to be a small part of that. So thanks for your comment.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
With everything coming across the border right now, with all of the new diseases that we actually have vaccines for, like polio, whooping cough is coming back. You got the measles and all these other diseases that are, how are we going to address that in the future?
Well, it's a good question. Just to repeat for the mic, the question is, what are we going to do about the rise that we're seeing with a lot of old illnesses that are coming back, basically, and they're coming back for a dozen different reasons. But that's obviously an undocumented population that may be carrying an illness that hasn't been properly vaccinated. Could potentially be a source, as we saw in Chicago. There was an outbreak of measles. That's not blaming a population. That's not branding people. That's not doing anything. The idea is you have to understand as a health officer and as a health department that you got to look at the population and understand your population in order to be able to protect and to diagnose. And that if something comes up, you can't just say, well, we used to see that. We don't see that anymore. We really haven't dealt with measles in the United States in the past 20 years. What was interesting, the first thing I did when I saw that was I wrote down a clinical cheat sheet for the ER, because ERs have not dealt with measles and actually had to make the diagnosis of Koplik spots in the mouth. I mean, you say that to some guy my age and they go, yeah, that's what you do. You say that to somebody that's just out of medical school or somebody who's been in practice in the last 15 years and they're like, Koplik spots, I remember that from the book, but I've never had to deal with it. So the answer to your question is we have to be a lot more aware than we used to be. And we have to be a little more vigilant with regard to what we see medically going on. And you cannot take things for, it's kind of like an emergency response. You don't take it for granted and you act carefully when you start to do these evaluations. And I think that's a good question. And I think that's probably the best answer I can give for that.
Matt, you and I have talked about COVID and long-term impacts and your personal COVID experience. And is there anything you want to share relative to that? Because there's a lot of flus going around now. And the combination, if you've had COVID exposure or have flu and COVID simultaneously, there's a lot of things that are health risks that people just don't know about. So is there anything you could provide advisory, not to take away their individual doctor's recommendations, but things that people just need to be aware of and try to identify what level of testing do I need to go through to find out what's going on?
Thank you for asking that, because that's really important. What we're seeing is a little bit of change in the way people are diagnosed now with COVID. You know, when COVID has changed a couple of times. We've seen sort of the evolutions of COVID, if you want to call it that. But it's really a situation where what we used to test on the first day and you'd see a positive little bar on the rapid antigen test, we don't see that now. What we see is that about day 3, you'll see a trace. And then day 4, you'll see it a little more robust. And then day 5, you may see it as a profound bar. That's a big deal because you can identify that you have COVID at the time. I want to jump to the idea of long COVID because I think that's a significant problem. It spans all demographics. It's not just old people that got sick. Young people, that is people from the ages of 17 to about 28, are showing the most profound cases of long COVID. Now, it may just be that there's a heightened awareness with it, but that's significant because we're talking about the productivity of their life. And it's everything from a brain fog to calculation of numbers to comprehension and retention of memory. If someone felt that they had that, the first thing to do is get evaluated. The next thing to do, if you get a diagnosis of long COVID, there are research programs. UC Davis is one. The University of Miami has another one. So there's a list, and if somebody wanted to know, you could reach out to me, and I'd just go, here's all the different institutions. But it's important to get into a program early. And it's also important to get into a program because they're still learning about this disease is not that old. And so we're still learning things that I think are going to be very important. I hope that's helpful, and I'm not muddying it up too much.
No, I think that's very helpful. And your personal experience, having had COVID and those kinds of things, really brings that home because that's what you experienced, right?
Yeah, I didn't like it. I didn't like having COVID.
Positive.
No,
Yeah,
sir.
no, none of us do.
That'd be my first conclusion was that I really didn't like it. And I have to say, I tested and I continued to test, and about day 3 is when I tested positive. And I actually at that time started on Paxlovid. Now, I'm not endorsing a drug or a brand or any of that kind of stuff, but I took it because the physician that evaluated me said, yeah, this is probably a good call for you. Again, results differ, and if you have a contraindication, you can't take it. But the truth is that I think that I felt it, maybe it's my age, but I felt it more than I would have felt, say, like a flu or other things. And there's been a lot of anecdotal discussion about the fact that if somebody had COVID, they got better, but then they get RSV or they get flu, that they may actually feel it or it may have more of an impact for them. It's not true of everybody, but there are some notations in the literature now that are saying that people who get a follow-on respiratory illness after having it sometimes have a little bit of a heightened response. And I think that that's pretty significant.
Thank you. So let's open it up for questions from the members present here, the public members. Yeah. Pat, please. Have you got a microphone? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pat Kriz. I have 3 questions. They're very short. What is your relationship with the local EPA office? And do you interact with them on toxic spills and things? And also, I've been reading a lot about PFAS, toxic chemicals that are building up in waste and waste management sites, and also from sewer treatment plants that are selling fertilizer. And do you have any experience with that? And the third is, they put a lot of herbicides on the sides of our streets to kill the grass adjoining the roadways. And is there some kind of control of the kinds of herbicides that are being used on our streets and roadways?
That's 3 big questions. So if I forget, I'll go back and ask you just to remind me of them. The first one has to do with the EPA. What's my relationship with the EPA? My relationship as a county health officer is really not a lot with the EPA. Who I communicate with is environmental management in El Dorado County, because they're the analog that would then percolate the information or question up to the EPA. I can still ask a question of EPA, but we've got a very good director of environmental management. I work very closely with Jeff, and we've already started to do some things like look at hazmat and some other things that environmental management in El Dorado County does. Their landscape crosses everything from like landfills to some of the chemicals you're talking about. I'm going to transition and just say that when you talk about PFAs or polyfluoroalkyls, those are compounds that don't just come from degradation. PFAs are found in a lot of different things. I don't want to go into a long history lesson of toxic chemicals in the United States, but this is important to understand that a lot of the companies that made stuff, like the most famous one is like Teflon or something. And so the idea was it was created a long time before the EPA existed. when the EPA came into existence, these companies were asked to report what are toxic chemicals. They didn't know, or they didn't, or if they knew, they didn't tell, or whatever. So we're still kind of unearthing what they are. They're a class of chemical that the human body can assimilate and ultimately not eliminate. In other words, we don't get rid of it. It isn't like like vitamins, where if you take too many, you just go to the bathroom and it's gone. In terms of some of these chemicals, they retain in the tissues. Some of them are anticipated to be in 98% of the species on the planet Earth. So they've been there and they're with us. The question is, what do they do to us? And we don't really honestly fully know yet. Some of them are endocrine disruptors, and they can have effects on things like a person's body and function and certain things that they need to do or be able to do, and it may compromise. But we're not fully there yet in terms of the understanding. And I forget your third question, but I think it had to do with herbicides. If there's a human exposure of an herbicide and it's seen in an emergency department, the doctor notifies the health officer in the county, and there's a report that I file on the health side. They also are notifying environmental management. If they don't, I do. And then environmental management investigates the herbicide, the components of it, what the controls are on it. Fire and rescue may at times be called out to look at it from a hazmat standpoint and say, okay, what does the ERG say on this thing, and what do we need to be worried about? And then mitigation would take place based on that. So that would be my role in that particular enterprise. Part of it's communication, part of it's identification, part of it then is mitigation and or the registering of the individual, so that we can if we have to, we can support that person.
But are the herbicides they're using safe?
Well, some herbicides are safe and some herbicides have some risk. That's a broad question, and it's kind of a challenging question just to answer with a simple yes or no. Salt is an herbicide. Is salt safe? Unless you eat too much, and then you have issues with it. The chemicals I think that you're talking about, especially the ones that potentially could have harmful effects on humans, often have some rules that are very clearly stated about how you store, how you use, how you disseminate, and then how you ultimately get rid of those things. And Chief, you're more of a hazmat guy than me by a mile. So, I mean, if I'm saying anything that's incorrect, please correct me. But I think that's how I would approach it. And I think that's the best answer I can give on that.
Anyone else?
Yes, sir. The ombudsman is going to.
Okay, yes, I am. It's going to be an ombudsman question.
Okay.
When we met, we met a while back up at Cameron Park and Marshall when they opened a training center for people. And the question I wanted to ask is, does your office can do or will do something about trying to alleviate the shortage of caregivers in assisted living facilities? It's a big problem. I've worked with Folsom College trying to get classes to bring people in to be trained, but that doesn't seem to really work. So I don't know if your office, gets involved in that kind of thing, and if you do get involved in that kind of thing.
The answer to your question, first of all, I'm gonna call you out a little bit, because you said the last time you saw me I had on a suit and you didn't recognize.
He's the only one with a suit.
Like I'm stepped way down from there. In answer to your question, it's a big need. My office is kind of me. I exist as a support mechanism for a lot of different things in the county. I reside in Health and Human Services as my position administratively. The answer is that's what Health and Human Services does. It's part of what they do. As far as identifying individuals that can do it, there are, especially under the Medi-Cal provisions in the state of California, and I'll admit I'm not the biggest expert on Medi-Cal, but under the Medi-Cal provisions, depending on the plan that you're on, you may actually you may have the ability to subscribe to some community investment programs where they can actually provide nursing, or they can provide what are called licensed care workers. Those are individuals who are not quite a nurse, but they can work and execute certain types of plans to support people that are in these facilities. There's also behavioral health that goes along with it. And so in this county in particular, a couple of the plans, I'm not going to call them out because I don't want to necessarily do that, but I think a couple of the plans are very robust in terms of what they can do for county support in certain ways. They're not unlimited. and they're not a government plan to subsidize that necessarily, but there are leveraging mechanisms that can actually come into play. I think it's an area that's not going to get better before we see more challenges with it, just to be candid, because we have an aging population. We have, I think when I first looked at El Dorado County, I saw El Dorado, Sacramento County, and I want to say Placer County had a senior spike of 6% above what everybody else was seeing just based on linear aging. That meant people were moving in. That meant that there was a disproportionate number of people that were considered to be senior. That presents challenges. I think it also lends itself to some, thoughtful, experienced, citizens. But oftentimes there are some health issues that go along with it. It's going to be a bit of a challenge. I don't have a fast answer to say, yeah, that's going to get done. I will say that it's not like it isn't on the radar, and I think the Board of Supervisors and the other members that lead this county are well aware of it, and I think are doing everything in their power to try to support it. Supervisor, if I'm misquoting.
Also, you want to talk about that health map?
I do. So there, yeah, I say it and then they'll, yeah. The public health department actually has a van that we're going to be getting. We can use that for certain outreach mechanisms. There are some programs like Lifeline and others that actually go out and draw blood and do some health checks. What we're trying to do, you mentioned the School for Medical Technology, that opening that took place the other day. I think there's a great opportunity for kind of co-locating some of those things like the med tech students, the van itself that's going to be coming, certain outreach and education stuff, and maybe even signups and registries for people with regard to Medi-Cal that could use it. Those things are going to be in play, and I think that they have really robust potential. The van should be here, I think, within the next month. We should have it, and the idea here is its pure purpose is actually communicable disease mitigation, but it can be used for other health and medical processes within reason. And I think that they're already planning to do that, and I think they're going to probably do it pretty well. So thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah.
Yes,
What
sir.
are the 2 or 3 biggest challenges you believe you and your department face in El Dorado County?
Well, I mentioned the infectious disease issues. I mentioned tuberculosis in particular. We don't know what we're going to see with that. And that is a labor intensive and kind of a risky, dangerous illness. We think of TB like we think of Doc Holliday or something. Most people don't really consider the fact that tuberculosis, not 100 years ago, was a pretty devastating thing here in America. And we fortunately we thought past it. The truth is, it is still among us. We're seeing rises in cases. I am concerned that, one, the awareness is not there on some of these illnesses, that maybe we can make a dent in that by being better communicators. I think the other thing is, and it's a simple formula, resource. You're trying to do more with less. And sometimes the challenges are greater, whether it's because of the population or illnesses or things that pop up that we aren't anticipating. So I'd say it's really resource, and I'd also say that it's probably some of the emerging threats that I talked about.
And you mentioned to me in the past that Chicago was kind of a hot spot for some of these things going on. So you watch the hot spots across the country, try to determine if that's spreading, because that raises our risk, obviously, but hopefully it gets subdued and in control.
Yes, sir. It's a small world, and we have jets. And so what used to take a long time to get across an ocean takes that long. Or if you're coming from one city to another, you can be moving before you're aware that you're exposed. I called out, I'm not calling them out, I mentioned Chicago because it's made the press, and there's been a lot of discussions about it. And the truth is, they were struggling. CDC dispatched a team to help support. So I think that they did an admirable job with it. Truth is, it's a nice reminder that it happened there and not here, that we need to be ready to deal with it too. Yeah. There's an old adage that says a smart person learns from their mistakes and a genius learns from the mistakes of others. And I'd like to be a genius. So whatever's going on out there, I think we can learn from it and at least be better positioned in the future.
Very good. Any final questions for Matt?
I just have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, First Five El Dorado is very lucky to have Dr. Minson as his newest commissioner,
Yes.
working to help expectant parents and families with children 0 to 5 be ready to school, and we're very pleased to have you. Thank you.
You're very gracious. Now let's give him a round of applause. I didn't see it clear.
Yeah, we have
2
one
minutes ago,
question,
so-
yeah.
We have one question online. It just popped up. Maya Schneider from Marshall Hospital. She's going to be our guest speaker next month, by the way, so. Go ahead, Maya.
Good evening. Thank you, Supervisor Hydal, and good evening, everybody. Dr. Minson, such a great presentation, and I look forward to meeting you in person. I'm on the business side of the hospital, so we won't talk about anything clinical, but just in response to John Raslier's question about nursing shortages, there are a number of legislative fixes that are being attempted this year in California that encourage more baccalaureate level nursing programs and more instructors. So to Dr. Minson's point, the progress is slow, but there are lots of different moving pieces that hope to open that bottleneck just a little bit. So that was my only comment for this evening.
Thank you, Maya.
I might add, the El Dorado County Office of Education, Adult Education has a medical assistance program. And if any of you know someone who's interested in being trained as a medical assistant, their adult education program is accepting applications and are happy to train folks in the field.
Matt, appreciate it. All right. Okay, we'll move on to item 5, supervisory communications. And George, do you have anything you want to add? Because I know sometimes you have to get back to other stuff, so.
Yeah, I know, I got a lot of stuff going on. So anyway, basically, we've got a lot of issues and stuff in El Dorado Hills that we're dealing with right now, and reach out to my office and I'll explain a little bit what's kind of going on. I know we got to be real careful what we talk about, but anyway, if you need the fact sheet or anything like that on some of these projects coming up, just reach out to them. We'll make sure you get it.
Very good. Okay, so I'm going to go through the standard list here very quickly. Nothing new on Costco or El Dorado Hills, the mixed use preparation of the CEQA document. Nothing new in Town and Country Village. We have a draft environmental impact report that's being prepared. The third bullet, AKT Community for Health and Independence. We've received pre-planned documents. They're out on the county website if you want to read about it. We've scheduled what we call a J6 review. J6 is one of the county policies, the J category, and it's all about a conceptual review of a project very early on, which allows the first formal public response and Board of Supervisors response, with not the intent to say we hate this project or we love this project, but what are the opportunities associated with the project that may not have been considered yet that can be brought into the discussion to see if we can make it a better project as proposed. Ultimately, the Planning Commission, the board will hear it, and if it moves forward, then a decision will be made. But how do we make it the best project we can, by collaborative inputs and really trying to support the things that would help our communities? That's what really J6 is about, in my opinion.
John, do we have an update on what happened with Folsom? Or what's happening with Folsom in their review of this project?
I don't know that they have anything agendized right now. We have not had our 2x2 with the city of Folsom.
Right.
That's coming up before the end of the month, and they'll have a chance to ask those questions, because I'm not. The difficulty is city of Folsom doesn't have control property rights of anything south of White Rock Road in that area right now, so it would require an annexation, and annexation is a fairly long process. It goes through LAFCO, as we know. So they're in a talking stage, but I don't think they can say anything definitive about what are they discussing at this point, but we'll find out. Yep. So April 23rd, that's the important date if you're interested in this, at 1 p.m., the normal Board of Supervisors meeting on a Tuesday, they will make their J6 presentation, and I just noted here it's 1,400 acres of project work in El Dorado County and 1,400 acres in Sacramento County, and so more to come on that, but the project is expected to start in El Dorado County in terms of any approved plans, construction, because they don't have to annex to get rights for developing their property. There will have to be general plan amendment, land use, zoning changes, et cetera, that has to go through the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. But that's all within the authority of our planning department to implement those procedures and then have the public review. So if you're interested in that particular project, we did provide up at the top here think we had the link to where that is. Looks like it's disappeared. The planning department's stuff, I'd left that in there, I thought, but okay. We can get that to you because all of these, oh, here it is right here. It's part of it's at number 5. It's the lead in. It says https://www.government/planning. That's the website you can go to. And if you look for the Community for Health and Independence project, you can pull all the documents down, as well as APAC's website has a lot of information as well. So with that, I'm going to move on to Generations at Green Valley. The notice of preparation period has closed now. That was for the draft EIR. And so the preparation of that draft EIR is started and it's expected to take, I'm guessing, about 6 months. That's typical. Could be shorter, could be longer, but that's a typical time frame because it takes the consultants a while to pull all that information together, to respond to all the public inputs, to define really what are the impacts, the category of the impacts, and then define potential mitigations. So that will be coming back at some point in the future. Maybe in 6 months. So that's just a guess at this point. So let me cover the last one. We'll go back and pick up any questions. The Carson Creek R&D Development Project, District 2. It's also known as the Gateway Project. It's in the Eldorado's Business Park. We have a fact sheet that's been released on that answers a lot of questions that have been posed on some of the social media that just didn't seem to resonate with facts. So we want to make sure the fact sheet was out there. I think that's an ongoing process, as I understand it from our Director of Planning and Building, to update that fact sheet.
Yes, exactly.
More and more information becomes available.
Right.
There are 2 buildings under construction, and they were determined by county planning to be by right ministerial projects. They're all 2 warehouse type uses in the business park. And we've had warehouses that have been built in the business park for about 30 years now, since that business park got started up. So there's nothing new there. And I was reminded that PAC Trust did make a presentation to APAC on the Gateway project back in the, I think it was August timeframe of last year. So yeah, August of last year. So that information's been out there, prepared by McKinsey. So the first, I think, probably public exposure, the conceptual elevations and the uses for the facilities came out in that timeframe. So people shouldn't be overly surprised. It's been around a while. We've been talking about it, and it's in District 2. So any questions, we've been forwarding to the District 2 office so that we're not putting out different information. They need to come from Supervisor Turnbow, and then we'll forward that.
So if you need information, just reach out. I'll make sure you get the fact sheet on that. So.
It's also posted on the APAC website.
Right.
Okay.
Other people.
Supervisor, I'd like to comment on that. This Gateway project is an area of deep concern for the people in Four Seasons and the other community. And if you add, I think the very, very big problem with this project is that nobody really knows what the whole project is. They've only given us a small piece, 2 buildings with about, 24 docks for trucks. And then there's a potential for many, many, many more docks for loading and for delivery. And Heritage and Four Seasons sit right on the doorstep to this, and the traffic that it's going to cause is going to be horrendous. I know the people at Heritage had a big meeting, I think last week, where they had a tremendous turnout of the residents talking about their concern with this project. And again, I'm very happy to say that APAC now has 2 standing committees, which we never had before. One of them just for transportation and the other one for environmental. And both of those committees have spent a considerable amount of time looking at this project. And to say that it's by right ministerial is, I don't know, I think it's misleading, because we haven't had the whole picture. We don't know what they are going to put in there in totality. So, and if you add that to what they want to put on our county line right near Folsom, if you want to put what the hospital wants to put there or AKT wants to put there, this is dumping a tremendous amount of building and people and trucks and things right in our doorstep. And all of it falls into District 2, Supervisor Turnbull. So something
I
that
know.
we really have to
And our
take a look at.
Director of Transportation, Rafael Martinez, has had some time to comment on those things. He's doing a deeper dive study. But what he's told me so far is the current uses that are being proposed are consistent with what was approved for the business park many, many years ago. So we have to kind of understand what is historical and what is ministerial and what can truly be changed, given there's been new findings associated with something environmentally. So that's the way I've always been counseled by county council. Unless there's new findings, you can't go back and open up an EIR, for instance. So we'll have that discussion. It's under Supervisor Turnbull's leadership. Contact him with your concerns. I've heard the concerns and I understand the concerns, but that business park was planned a long time ago before the residential communities went in. So
You're missing the point that they've given us the plans only for a small segment of this. There are other lots that are going to be added to this that could significantly contribute to environmental concerns and to traffic concerns that are there. It's kind of like looming in the distance. It would be something like the doctor here, if he looks at one particular thing and maybe it'll lead to something else. Well, maybe there's something else going on there. So I really think that to call this a ministerial thing is kind of misleading at this point. We'd have to know what the totality of that plan is by that builder. You know, not.
the builder does one thing, the occupant and the uses are something else.
Well, it depends who he sells it to.
Turns out there's no control over that. Once something is approved, the occupants can determine the use consistent with the approval process, right? If you have loading docks, you can use a loading dock. So again, DOT needs to weigh in on this more. Planning needs to weigh in on it more. They were the ones that advised it was ministerial in their interpretation. When I talk to county council, I hear the same thing. So I'm not questioning the ability to ask the question. I'm just trying to find out where is it that by state law and our local governmental processes is the right answer relative to, is it ministerial or not? And my read right now is it's ministerial. Maybe George has a different opinion.
Well, I think there could be better uses for that particular property myself. That's what I think. I know that, John, and the biggest thing is the matrix. The matrix was supposed to have been updated and changed basically when Project Frontier, because that's what I was promised, and it hasn't happened yet. So I'm pretty upset with that part of it too. So anyway.
Well, that's coming. But
I know.
That's always the story, right?
I know. I understand.
Other comments relative to this? Yes.
Well, like environmental, they didn't check on the environmental, something about taxes, different things, and I apologize, I can't find them really fast. But supposedly they were okayed when you're not supposed to be okayed until you follow this program, until you actually get these permits, and they didn't do it. Is that
New
true?
projects, that's absolutely true. But again, this is part of the El Dorado's business park, which was approved many years ago. So that's what we have to abide by, to my understanding. But again, Supervisor Turnbull.
They don't have to follow any laws?
I'm sorry, you missed the last part?
So did they check these laws a long time ago or something? I don't understand it.
Environmental review a long time ago. Things got approved. There's an agreement in terms of what kind of uses can be put in the R&D business park. And it is so wide in terms of what can be put in there. We have daycare centers, we have doctor's offices, dentist offices, small schools, you name it, pretty much is in that business park. John Adams Academy. So when you think of an R&D park, those terms are misleading from general experience of what an R&D park is. I used to go to a lot of R&D parks over in the Bay Area. They look nothing like the El Dorado's business park. But at the time they put the agreement together for the El Dorado's business park, they had a very wide-reaching definition of what was allowed.
And now it's smaller, is that what you're saying? It's not as wide?
Well, no, it's the same agreement that we're trying to abide by, because that's what the by rights means. And I'm not an attorney, so I'm not trying to give you legal counsel on anything. But that's what it means. It was approved by the Board of Supervisors. All the environmental studies were done. Traffic circulation was one of them. Raphael, I believe, has agreed to go back and look at those in detail. Is it really working out the way it was intended to be? I think Creekside, their development will tell you that their proposal would be less traffic, if you believe that, than what similar uses that are approved within the R&D park. But Creekside is now outside the R&D park. So that creates another element for that particular project. So it all needs to be looked at. We all need to listen and understand the legalities of these things. But ultimately, you can't revisit something just because you don't like what's there unless there's grounds for it. And I've always been told that's new environmental findings. Something like a new cultural resources discovery. Okay, now you have to open that up. Something that's significant that affects the overall conclusion of that original EIR.
Do you know what year the original was?
I've been told 1982 without digging it up, but it was in that time frame.
You're right, John.
So
1982.
that's 18 plus 20.
That's a long
40
time
years
ago.
That kind of got cast.
Yeah.
So we're trying to follow it as closely and understand what the implications are, because again, I don't think you can arbitrarily open up a sequel. We would probably be sued by the business park owners for that. If the county just tried to say, oh, we're going to require a brand new EIR. I don't think you can do that short of data, information, findings that are different from what was originally reviewed.
It seems that residential buildup, that area is far surpassing what originally happened as far as laws and regulations on the industrial portion of it. And so all of a sudden now we've got more residents and more homes that are going to be affected by a rule that happened back in '82.
The residential communities have never been in the business park. The two separate entities. You have property that surrounds a business park.
Well, that's right across the street from where you live.
Understand?
So and that's what I'm saying, is I can see these two that are just being built now, and then there's this rumor, we don't know, that there's more coming down the road. And I can see these, as far as distribution centers are concerned that I've seen, they're big trucks, not, they're big distribution trucks that come in. If that's what's happening here, that's going to be really a hindrance to us on the residential side, and there's more homes coming in. So it's not, there's a lot of people involved in this.
I don't remember all the information that came out of the August APAC meeting, but I think there was
Well-
questions asked like what kind of uses would go in there.
At a high level, we discussed the two buildings, building 112 and 113. We had heard for a long time that it was a ministerial decision because it's a by rights use of the property. If you go through and you do like even just a simple satellite view of the business park, there are bigger buildings, there are smaller buildings. Coincidentally, when I worked for TRW back in the 80s and when I worked for Georgia Pacific in the early 90s, we looked in the El Dorado Hills Business Park. It was too far away from everything. But tilt-up warehouse type buildings is what we were looking at for terms of construction. And a lot of the buildings are like that. The question about loading docks, that's a question we submitted a letter to planning and saying, well, what's the floor plan allow? What's the ratio? How many loading docks can you put on a building? Yeah, so we never got a response, and I submitted it again. But
We have seen, though, John, the drawings, and it shows 42.
but that's the
loading docks.
question, is that allowable? So we got to make that determination, right? Or the county needs to let us know. So, at our meeting, they talked about those buildings going in. They showed the elevations. We put them on the APEC website, and they're pretty well circulated now. They talked a little bit about the small sort of retail project they're considering. They'd submitted an application last year in like March or January for 3 small retail buildings south of Tractor Supply. And if everyone remember, there was a proposal by the developer back then for mixed use, high density residential, a lot of apartments, and then Tractor Supply was that first retail piece. So what they proposed for the 3 retail buildings is that they said that they had heard from some people in the community that you'd like some, instead of driving to town center to get coffee, there's 2 drive-through uses. So I imagine one will be a coffee vendor of some sort, fast food or a sandwich place or whatever. And then a third just retail building. So they talked about that a little bit. They withdrew that application because it was a pre-application request because they didn't recognize that it's an approved use in the R&D zone. So you can put those, we have the deli and the business park and other things like that. And we talked about a lot, swim schools, schools, churches, preschools, daycares, everything. So the food uses are, by rights with, in the R&D zone, they can have that. The only restriction on that that qualify in the zoning ordinance is that if the parcel is immediately adjacent to a residential parcel, you have to get a conditional use permit, which is still just something you check your boxes that you're mitigating the impacts. So but it isn't adjacent, it doesn't, I mean, it's across the street. So it's close, so let it the law, spirit of the law, right? So we talked about those things. We briefly talked about, they have the parcel split that they've proposed, and some of those spaces will remain open space because they have, they have, what is it? I'm drawing a blank, but they're taking care of part of the Carson Creek, their easement on it, So, we talked briefly about that, but we didn't get into details, but we subsequently saw they have marketing materials out, obviously, now that they have, at least four, I think it's 70, 80,000 square foot buildings, similar loading dock. Right, so that's not what we talked about at the meeting. So that was kind of a surprise. So that is the question. Is that an allowable use in that zoning? Is there any restriction on how many trucks or, how many loading docks there are for the floor space? We don't know those answers, and I'm hoping we'll have that discussion, because if we talk about it and say, yes, it's allowed, well, then it's, it's allowed in Supervisor Heidel suggested. Unless
The
there's,
ordinance defines some of that.
yeah,
As part of the fact sheet, so that's part
Yeah.
of the general plan.
but those,
Well, it's related to the general plan. It's really.
but there's no application, so we don't even know what, it's just what their marketing material shows. Yeah, so,
Terminology's changed with time too, in terms
Yeah.
of what is a warehouse, right? So.
well, not even just a warehouse, the director's determination back in June was that, fulfillment center, because of what we went through with, Frontier. And, most people welcome that determination, and, that's valuable, right? Because if a property owner knows it and what they can build is, they can't do a fulfillment center that's, 1,000,000 square feet with, however we define fulfillment center. And the county planners know that, and the residents know that. Okay, well, now that we're all starting from the same place. And I think I sent the letter in February to the director of planning, was asking, hey, when is this going to be incorporated into zoning code update, the ordinance? When will it be updated? Because right now we knew that Director Garner said, hey, that's a fulfillment center, but what's to say that somebody who's a director of planning 5 or 6 years from now will have a different metric for what is a fulfillment center? I'll know a fulfillment center when I see one. That's, we need empirical standards and say, okay, it is this, it is not that.
That's why the matrix got to be changed.
And so that's what I asked when the update might be coming. So, and to the point about, all the residential uses around that business park, I just remember nothing being out there for the longest time. It was hard for them even to develop the business park. It just is underperformed. I mean, over 40 years, it's pretty bad. But we allow those residential uses in like the late 90s and early 2000s. And those residential uses they say that they analyzed and considered the impacts of the business park and those being next to each other. The thing I pointed out was that, there's a helicopter landing pad for Aero Metals. It's like 400 feet from homes. Okay, well, they were there first, and they are a good community resident here in El Dorado Hills. The question is, should we have approved that much residential up against that type of use? And so, but that's a question from the past. It's approved. Property owners have rights. So we're looking at and exploring, in our standing committees for APAC are looking very hard at, is this compatible? And, we may find that it's not, but the law and the county may say that it is, and residents may have a problem as well with it. So, but as Supervisor Heidel points out, we need to talk about it. And we don't need to inflame it by saying it's something it's not, and we don't need to squash it down by saying it's something better than we think it is. So we just have a talk and discussion about it, and I appreciate that our standing committee members are working hard at looking at that.
I think Karen Garner agreed to be at your next APAC meeting.
I have not heard back from Karen.
Oh, okay.
So,
She said
told
she
me
would.
Wanted to be.
Yeah.
I know she was trying to be at the other one, but she had the event uphill last week. So
Right.
I will check with her again.
Yeah.
She said she wanted to come, so.
Yes, if you can get her on the agenda.
Yeah, please do.
She can share with you her perspective,
Yeah.
her study from the history and talking to the planners about the details of what's a ministerial project versus what's a discretionary project. Because I think the more we all understand that, the better off we're gonna be in terms of trying to communicate.
Yeah.
What
And-
kind of a project is this, all right? Because the state keeps changing things too.
Yeah.
When you get into housing, SB 35 is a ministerial project. If
Yeah.
one family meets certain criteria, the planning commission is supposed to basically say, yep, you met all the criteria, we're not gonna
Can't
put
do
any
anything.
conditions on it.
Can't do anything.
That's what the state is going towards.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And, yeah, so we'll look at it again. I mean, I know there's, we've seen the document from the DOJ about what their perspective is on the environmental impact of warehouses.
Yeah.
But there's no legislation that quantifies that yet. So it's just,
I don't know if DOJ has any authority on any of how things housing.
they'll file a lawsuit if they don't like it,
That's
right?
Yeah, that's
Right,
right. That's
so,
what they do. Yeah, but anyway,
um,
we'll find out more about that too.
so yeah,
I think
so,
we did have a follow-up question here, because we need to move off this. This is really a discussion, should happen at APAC.
Hey,
Because that's where we
thanks.
do the community planning stuff. That's not what community council is all about. Years ago, 1982-ish, we had an organization called the El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee. That got started with the intent of reviewing projects. Essentially, we formed another group called the El Dorado's Community Council because we recognized not everything happening in El Dorado Hills was associated with development projects. There were a lot of other things of interest to people. So those two organizations, I think Community Council was formed 1978, 1980, somewhere, and I could go back and look at the actual dates, but both of those organizations have been in existence for 40 years, serving different purposes. I like to include in the agenda that I have status, where we at the county in terms of things that are moving forward, make the public aware of, hey, there's a meeting coming up. If you really have an interest in this project, you should probably try to dial in, but where it's community input in depth for a project, a development project, APAC is really the better body for that to be reviewed and heard at. So I'll defer to their agenda, and we're going to have that come up in the subsequent discussion. So any final questions on this or any other comments that I made earlier? Okay, and I'm not seeing anything in terms of hand raised. So with that, let's move into our leadership team progress reports. I don't know if we have anybody from the sheriff's office with us, because we always start with safe and healthy communities. I'm not seeing one from the sheriff's office. Do we have any? I don't see Officer Brown. So we don't have any and they were both here last month, I'll note. We got a sheriff's report and we got a CHP report, so we'll continue to encourage them to attend and participate whenever they can. So let's move on to our El Dorado Hills Fire Report, and then we'll move on to Healthy Communities Report.
Yep. Again, Michael Anthel, Deputy Chief with El Dorado Hills Fire Department. From the El Dorado Hills side, there's a few updates for us. We are starting the vegetation management process. I think I talked about that at last meeting. We're getting out and looking at properties and doing our inspections that we do each time as we get around this time of year. Even though it's been raining, we are getting ready and prepping for wildland season coming up. And we're also looking at updating our development impact fees that we charge as the new homes are built. And that's a process by where our board would be adjusting the fee based on the impacts that new growth has on the fire department services we provide, and just making sure that the services we offer today will continue into the future at the same great quality that we have today. So we're working on that. We also got a new Type 3 wildland engine that just arrived. We're real happy about that. That gives us a lot of depth and a lot of opportunity to deliver just up nose, I'd say the best level of wildland fire protection around. It's just good equipment, makes a big difference for the firefighters who are going to a vehicle fire right now. And on the OES side of things, which I also wear that hat, we're doing a lot of evacuation planning this year. We're doing a lot of marketing like we did at the last community council meeting, wanting people to sign up for the alerting platforms that we have. We're also doing a lot of training. So we're doing town halls on evacuations. We're going to do some active shooter training here in El Dorado Hills. So just a lot of really good, I would say, all risk type training and preparation going on in the community, and a lot of support from El Dorado Hills Fire and the Board of Supervisors and just everyone working together. So things are looking great, and I'm open to any questions if you have them. Yes, sir.
In Sacramento recently, there was a active shooter exercise, and it wasn't broadcast to the school that that was experiencing that exercise. Is that something that is going to be advertised in the community, or wherever you're going to have the active shooter? Will that be advertised?
Definitely. We're actually working with John Adams Academy in the business park to do the active shooter drill the third week of June. So 100%. The reason we're waiting until that late into summer is so the kids are out of school. And then what we're going to bring in as explorers, some of our younger future firefighters, hopefully, and allow them to play student victims. So yeah, definitely, at least ours will be fully coordinated with the school system.
It's gonna be at the also a training, exercise at the training facility too.
Yes, constantly there.
Right, right.
Yep.
Fire department's training
Right.
facility.
Yes.
Pick me, Mike. On the vegetation management, how long does that usually take when you have crews out doing the inspections? And then I know last year was a challenge because there weren't enough crews to do the remediation work. Is it looking any different this year?
As far as, I think one of the challenges we've experienced in terms of not getting the inspections done, we have defensible space inspectors that we have hired with the chief that we came on about almost 6 years ago now. We brought on a new program where we hired people dedicated to that task just so we could keep up with the volume. As far as getting properties that are non-compliant mitigated, meaning we do the abatement on the properties and then we lien the tax rolls for those properties to ensure that the homeowners or property owners pay for them. We have encountered challenges just with getting contractors available to do the work. So I'm not sure what this year will look like as far as availability. We're out there looking for people to sign up and be willing to do that project. But hopefully this year will be better. I mean, the economy has changed a little bit. There might be some more workforce available to actually do the mitigations, but we won't know until we get there.
Tell you they're active because I received a notice, I think it was like March 27th, saying April 1st is when inspections start. But I was already notified I had 2 properties. So on March 31st, I got all of my limbing up done. Property looks great, but it's kind of like I was waiting as long as I could to do those things like weed eating because you have to do it 2 or 3 times. So that's always the tough call with late rains that happen
I know.
sometimes even in July.
Right.
You're out there in August doing that final weed eating. And if you start in March, it's a long period to be continually trying to manage that vegetation, but it needs to be done. I'm not arguing against it. I tried that once. It didn't work out well.
The goats are everywhere right now.
They are.
CSD's
They
using them.
definitely are. Any other questions or comments for the chief? Go ahead, John.
Mike, I think it was last week, the Four Seasons asked someone from the fire department to come down and talk to us about the new laws, the new state laws that are coming down the pike insofar as safety zone, protective zone around the house. And some of them are very, very stringent. I don't see how homeowners are going to be able to cut back on all the shrubs and bushes that they have. And you did send a gentleman down, a name just slipped my mind. And he did give them an idea of what may happen. What he mentioned, though, was the important thing is that some of the insurance companies are now sending an inspector down, and they're saying, well, if you want homeowners insurance, you're going to have to remove this tree, this bush, and some other things, which is, like I said, I don't see how they're going to be able to incorporate some of the things that they really want.
Yeah, I mean, 2 different conversations. You have a proposed change to the existing Title 14, which would require that first 5 feet around your house to be non-combustible, no vegetation, basically rock or concrete around the borders of all homes. That has not been fully implemented and adopted yet. It's going to be incredibly controversial because there's existing homeowners that would then have to make this change. So a lot of discussion, I'm sure, that will continue on that topic. The research shows that that is the way to protect your house, which is why it's being discussed. The second half of this, what you were mentioning, which is right on, is the insurance industry is evaluating properties independently and apart from the fire agencies and saying, if you want us to protect your home with fire insurance, you have to do certain mitigations. They're coming up in a lot of ways on their own evaluation platform to say what is risky and what is not risky, and what mitigations does the insurance company require of a homeowner, separate and apart from the fire department and the stuff that we're doing. It's a big problem in California. I know you all know about it. There's a lot of discussions. I know Supervisor Turnbull and our Board of Supervisors have been active on this topic. There's a lot of discussion on it with fire insurance, and it's going up. State Farm just announced they're going to non-renew 40,000 properties in California this year.
72 residential and commercial.
So huge concern for everybody. Me too. I got State Farm. I've been canceled myself, and I live right here up the street from the fire station. So I sit there with you in that problem. But no, it's a complex problem right now, and there's a lot of politics around it. And I hope they get to some level of statewide solution on the insurance side because it's really impacting our homeowners.
So I just attended a little Hoover Commission meeting. They would talk about that, experts on both sides, from the insurance industry, from the insurance commissioner's perspective. And the conclusion statement I heard is, wow, this is a huge issue. I don't know how it ever gets resolved. Because they were using Florida as one of the examples of things not to do. And we can make that, that link to the Little Hoover Commission's discussion, because presentations were great, questions were great. You really understood the scope of what we're dealing with here. And it is huge. And right now, the only alternative to the private insurance companies are the California Fair Plan. Other states have fair plans and they have various rates and stuff. But our fair plan has been determined to be basically at a critical mass if they keep increasing it, because that's covered by insurance carriers, not the state of California, that they will basically have to do something different. And if they have to do something different, the only expectation you can have is premiums are going to go up. The rates are going to go up. So it's in a really bad situation. My view is the state legislator should have acted upon this some time ago, given the authority to the insurance commissioner, or made provisions to kind of move through this in a more organized fashion, but that didn't happen. There was some legislation proposed and it didn't go anywhere. So short of that, I think it's going to be a pretty sad picture with a lot of non-renewals being received by people. And the only thing is the fair plan. At some point, I'm guessing the fair plan is going to say, no mas, we can't accept any more because they can't cover it. So then where are you?
One of the biggest things is that one bill that actually went through the Senate and Assembly, and it was passed, but Ricardo Lara went to the governor and had it vetoed is what he did. And that was what the big problem was, because the insurance rates would have upped it a little bit, but then everybody would have been all across the board playing field. And that's what happened. So our insurance commissioner, as far as I'm concerned, he's never done insurance. As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't know what he's doing. So he's impacting a lot of the people here in the state of California, because I beat him up 3 times on Zoom, had him several times, and he just can't give you a clear answer on anything. John knows what I'm talking about. It's ridiculous is what it is. And these people are suffering right now. They really are. And the problem is we have one more horrific wildfire. It's going to wipe out that fund. That's going to be gone. Then what happens then after that? So we're in a bad situation right now with everybody pulling out. So it needs to be restructured from the ground up of what it needs to be done. So
We'll put the link in our minutes of where that little, because I think it's important to understand what's happening at that level of discussion, because they're advisory to the state legislator, to the governor, but they also looked at sequel reform several months ago, and I listened to that series, and it's kind of like, well, what came of it? Not much. So if we really want to solve our affordable housing issue, you have to deal with CEQA. And that was recognized by the Little Hoover Commission, but again, no real progress in that area. So you always hope that things will get better and people will understand the dire needs that other people are in and take the right actions. But at this point, it's indeterminate.
And the rates will continue, because they're trying to accelerate the mechanism for rate approval. That's always been the big problem with the DOI. And so I get those, when they submit them, I get them all the time. Progressive got like a 28% rate increase on auto after working on it for about 6 months. And then literally the next week they applied for another 28%. So it's not just fire, it's not just home and fire, it's everything. And they're asking and they're getting, I think farmers get 30 and grass for 32 now. So it's not insignificant. So good luck.
It's going to take everybody working together.
We do want our homeowners though to protect their properties,
Yes.
because the more we protect our properties, the less houses we're going to lose during a fire. Everything is interrelated, as you know.
and there's a lot of people can't even get on the fair plan, and you know what I'm talking about. And the biggest thing is now, so a lot of these people have mortgages and stuff. So now the loan companies are only just insuring what the value of the loan is. That's it. So it's really sad.
Kathy's got the answers for us with healthy communities.
Yeah,
How do we
yeah,
make
exactly.
healthy
Got us
communities,
any
right,
answers,
Kathy?
Kathy?
I need to continue the conversation about housing.
There you go. Okay.
Kathy Guerrero, First Five El Dorado. I'll start with my First Five El Dorado and then move into Commission for Youth and Families. I think I mentioned back in February, last time I was here, that the 211 number, the community resource number, was transferred to community hubs. And so we've been tracking data on the calls, and probably from publicity mostly, we saw a spike in calls, which were only a few a day when they first came through. In month of January, there were 104 calls to the line. And in the month of February, it was at 93. And so there are folks that are having needs and wanting to reach out about them. And I can tell you the majority of the calls are coming from folks that are experiencing homelessness. And so that continues to be an issue. And I want to punctuate, I think basic needs in general in our county are still an issue. I'm sure Supervisor Turnbull might have some food bank information. I only have the drive-through from Placer Food Bank, but in Placerville, there's a drive-through food distribution that happens once a month. In the month of February and in March, the number of households served in those two and a half hours is over 400 households. And that's in addition to Pollock Pines and Cameron Park, who are seeing in the area of 300 households every month. Georgetown's up in the mid twos. So we are still experiencing families that are struggling. And I'm very appreciative that we have the community hubs in order to help support that. As you know, that's a collaborative between First Five, our county libraries, and the County Office of Education that has navigation staff in our libraries as family resource centers. So we're continuing to do our best. I did pull a little bit of information just for El Dorado Hills because you kind of wonder if, you know, where we fit in it. In the month of January, there were 43 clients that received navigational services. There was someone who spoke Hungarian and someone who spoke Spanish. So we are encountering some language diversity in the community. And 6% or 6 of those folks, 14% were experiencing issues accessing basic needs. Month of February, the client number dropped to 20. There were 2 that were monolingual Spanish, and that there were 2 that were experiencing issues with basic needs. So it is here in our community as well in El Dorado
So
Hills.
that came in through the library, which is our hub, the other
Yes.
library, okay.
Yes.
Very local stuff, yeah.
Absolutely. And I've decided I'm going to start giving you that monthly information for El Dorado Hills so that you guys have a good profile. And I can certainly send that on to you, Supervisor Turnbow, if you'd want.
El Dorado County Food Bank is doing a really good job. They're distributing a lot of food to a lot of needy people. But there's one thing I just want to call up people's attention to that I'm pretty upset with. And I'll just read it to you. Basically, funding for homeowners or eligible counties, federal grants are available up to $500,000 on housing, rehabilitation and reconstruction for low, moderate income homeowners whose homes were affected by eligible disasters, including the 2020 wildfires in Butte, Shasta, and Siskiyou counties, and the 2021 Dixie Fire in Plumas County. Additional federal granting is available up to $50,000 per household for low to moderate income homeowners for mitigation and home hardening efforts. Learn more. The problem is Caldor was never put on this list, El Dorado County. The reason why? Because we didn't get the individual assistance. That's absolutely ridiculous. It should be the opposite. These people in these other counties got the individual assistance. El Dorado County did not get the individual assistance. If anything, it should be reversed. So anyway, any concerns, reach out to me. I've sent emails to all the different, our congressmen, our state senators, and also federal too, you know, because Alex Padilla, we're writing a letter right now, sending to him. This has to be answered is what it needs to be, because those poor people are still impacted because of that fire in Caldor. And especially one resident out there is still fighting with her insurance company to rebuild her house. And she has 2 children and she's gave up to other families, her families. And they're not even living around this area and stuff like that because she doesn't have enough room for them. This is an issue, and I just don't understand why these people are doing this to it, especially when it comes to our federal government. That's why it just is appalling to me. So trust me, I'd like to be on the assembly floor right now, but I'd probably be arrested because I would speak my mind. And people need to speak out on this because it's not fair to those people that are living still in RVs. And that individual assistance they didn't get is appalling. And this assistance would help them, especially with the Title 25 coming in April 9th. About actually they could build their own houses with their own lumber, and that would help them establish a home again. So I don't know. It's just beyond me.
You are correct. There are families that are struggling in this
Yeah.
community, especially housing and basic needs, some of which we don't have data directly to correlate
Yeah.
fire, but it is still a struggle.
It's just frustrating.
Two
Especially
more.
when I've been fighting for 3 friggin' years on this and still no results. So.
Just the last few things on the community hubs piece. One is that, as many of you I have shared before, that we've been talking about taking the best practice of community hubs and making it part of the gold standard service for El Dorado County. And to that end, there'll be a budget presentation on April 10th to talk about the first steps and seeing how we might transition those services into county government. So we're excited about that. And we have 2 vacancies that just posted for First Five El Dorado. If anyone's interested in the community for serving, see me afterwards. And the other hat that I wear is the El Dorado County Commission for Youth and Families. This is a newer commission that is supported by your CAO, Health and Human Services, County Probation, County Office of Education, and other community members. And I thought just for a bright spot, they just adopted their mission and vision, and I thought I might share them with the group. So the mission is that there are no wrong door in El Dorado County for families seeking services they need to thrive. And the vision is that by creating a coordinated, informed system, our community will collectively break down barriers so that our youth and families will have the support they deserve. So I'm excited to say that there's a group of folks that are really reaching out to our youth and trying to make sure that they have the supports and services they need to be successful. And they have openings for alternates on their commission, so thank you.
So any questions relative to the public safety presentations you heard or discussions? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the other leadership team inputs before Cindy and I give ours. So who wants to go next? I'm taking volunteers.
I want to hear Lauren's.
Lauren, you're up.
Okay. Specific to Oak Ridge High School, today was our last day of spring break, and so we'll be returning to school tomorrow. Prior to spring break, we had our student body elections, and so they elected new ASB officers for next year, as well as class presidents and vice presidents. And then we're also doing preparations for prom, which will be on May 3rd. And we're going to be having a rally with that as well, only available to juniors and seniors. And then when I was elected, something that was really important to me was like individual student recognition for the entire student body as a whole. I felt that prior to this year, we didn't do a great job of providing student activities or recognition to everyone. It was really specific to certain groups of very social people. Not everyone wants to go to a football game. Not everyone wants to go to a dance. And so part of our prom advertising, we individually created personalized invitations that went to every single junior and senior. So that was like over 1,000 different invitations that we wrote and say, you're invited to prom. And so we're hoping that will be something that will make each student feel recognized and supported on campus. And then in reference to the Youth Commission, we had our Wellness Week in mid-March. Wellness Week is a project that we've been doing for the past few years, and it's really to spotlight the mental health resources we have available to youth within the county, and to not only make those well advertised, but also show how accessible they are to youth, as well as spotlight the wellness centers that we have on each campus. And so each campus kind of took their own take this year. We kind of got upshown by El Dorado because they had specific different activities that happened every single day. I heard that there were goats, therapy goats on campus during lunch, which Oak Ridge did not have.
Therapy
Unfortunately,
goats.
there's some
Darn.
out here. We should have talked
I
to
know.
CSD.
That's
right?
what I'm saying.
But Oak Ridge, we had some flowers so friends could write down a note and then give it to somebody else as an act of kindness. We had some wristbands that said mental health matters. And although I think these things can kind of seem small and trivial, I think a lot of it's about reducing the stigma and starting those conversations. And if you have kids walking around with a wristband that says mental health matters, that's just one step towards people feeling more confident and comfortable opening up about mental health issues that they're having. And we were also able to promote the peer advocacy programs with that a little bit as well. Last meeting, I talked about how the Youth Commission was going to attend the school board meeting for the high school district and to talk a little bit about not only how important peer advocacy is as a program, but why it's so critical that we instill those programs as quickly as possible. So each of the commissioners from different schools walked up and talked about individual facets about why the program is so special and important. Personally, I use kind of a student government lens, and I talked about how it's not, I would say it's not sensible to have student government and link crew programs be trying to supply peer mentoring to students, especially with student populations as huge as Oak Ridge is. It's really hard to provide individualized support and to be able to recognize those students who need the additional mental health support. And so we had a really great turnout. We also had some Union Mind students who are going to be peer advocates next year. Union Mind was super enthusiastic about the program, and so they are having a program next year. And the school board was really enthusiastic about it as well. They essentially were saying to the school and to EDCO, like, let's find the money, let's make this happen on all the campuses. And so it was a really big success. And then the last thing is that the El Dorado County Youth Commission each year, at the end of the school year, we present to the Board of Supervisors about the activities we've done and things that we're seeing and hoping and goals for next year. And so that we'll be doing that soon as well.
I just have one. First, I want to say Lauren for president.
Yes, there
Start
you
the
go.
campaign now because Lauren will be president someday.
Yes.
And Lauren, I know that I want to make sure we get on the agenda a celebration so we can celebrate Lauren's graduation and her moving on and celebrate wherever it is that you're choosing to go to. So I just want to put that on our radar that we make sure we remember that.
Willing to announce that yet, or do you
Oh,
want, not want to share that with the
Uh,
public? Because I think it's impressive.
Yeah. So next year I'm going to be going to Georgetown University in DC. And I'm going to be studying in their School of Health, and I'll be studying healthcare management and policy. So
Congratulations.
So we're going to lose her, and it's going to be very difficult to replace her, but we're going to do our best, right? So thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank
Lauren.
you.
Yes. Who's next?
She's always hard to follow.
Yeah.
Well, light shines brightly everywhere, so this works well. So our APAC meeting is next week back here in this building. It's Wednesday, April 10th, 6:30 p.m. We do have a presentation guest speaker, and I think she's still online. Maya Schneider from Marshall Hospital is going to be talking about the Marshall Hospital expansion project here in El Dorado Hills and Town Center West. And so we're ASAM Community Council, because she'll be back to talk about that the following month, but we've been looking forward to hearing from Marshall Hospital about that. And then in terms of projects, we primarily have our transportation standing committee and our environmental standing committee to provide some updates. And I'm certain that we just posted some documents from those committees on the APAC website about Project Gateway. And they're on the project page for that. If you want to go ahead and take a look, it's a project under review on our menu. You could drop it down. Actually, it's under commercial development. I apologize. I'll make a change. It'll be under project under review. But those initial reports are there, and I was glad to see them come through, and they're very thoughtful. And the group of volunteers we've had looking at it, they've been looking at it for quite some time. So we did go ahead and provide copies of all those documents and the other letters that we have submitted over the past year or so. And so those have all been submitted up to the county. We're also going to have updates on any project statuses that are changing. We did get notification there's a TAC meeting. Tim's going to attend it virtually if they let him in the door for Marble Valley. So that'll be in 2 weeks in April, like the third week in April.
April 15th.
2 weeks. So pay your taxes, and Tim will update us about how the TAC meeting goes. So, but anything that comes up between now, our agenda will come out on Wednesday. Anything that comes up that's not physically on the agenda, we'll tack it on to project status updates. So virtual via Zoom here in the room. We love to see you here. And our goal this month is not to be 3 hours. We're trying really hard. So look forward to seeing everybody here next Wednesday.
Very good. So the two from District 2 representatives.
It's Mr. Ross Lear now, so it's all yours, John.
Put me on the hook.
I did.
Well, you know, I've already brought up the concerns about Gateway. And I do want to say that I've been involved with Marshall Hospital coming down the Blue Cross Blue Shield and what they've been doing. They invited community members down. And I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, we invited Marshall to come down, Maya to come down to talk exactly about what Marshall is going to do, what programs they're going to bring down. And I think it's going to be a significant improvement health-wise for the folks in District 1 and in District 2 to have this facility there. And the people at Four Seasons had some really, really great questions about if they belong to Kaiser, can they go to these facilities and you know, things along that line. So I'm excited about that. And I want to ask Lauren a question. You know, a while back I was involved with something called Sunshine for Seniors at your school. Is that still in existence?
I know the club you're talking about, and I actually know the club president, so I should ask her, but as far as I know, it is.
Okay, because what they would do, Sunshine for Seniors, they would give seniors in assisted living a headset where they could now listen to music that was paid for by the Folsom Lake Concert Association, and they could listen to their own music during the day. And I know it was a very, very big, successful program, and I'm just wondering if it's still in existence yet. It is. Okay, all right, thank you. I have nothing else to say.
Bob, do you have any parting words? Okay, all right. Cindy?
Hey, on April 13th, there's going to be in El Dorado Hills at the library, there's going to be a spring carnival. It'll be from 11 to 2 in the library parking lot. They're going to have carnival games, prizes, bounce obstacles, face painting. There's going to be food trucks. There's going to be a play area for those that are 0 to 5 years old. And they're very excited because last year they had over 700 people that participated. So they expect to have another very successful event. On April 17th, the CSD is having a park party and ribbon cutting for the brand new Saratoga Park. They're going to provide, it's from 5 to 7, they're going to be providing free dinner and games, and everybody can see the brand new park. On April 20th, the CSD, they're going to have an April Pools Day. It's a free day of swimming to start the swimming season. And the staff will be there to answer any questions about the summer programs that they're going to have there for the aquatic programs there. And on April 27th, the CSD is going to have a pitch, hit, and run event from 2 to 5 p.m. at Promontory Park. It's for baseball and softball players of all skills and abilities, and it's the 4th annual competition. It said it puts young ball players' fundamental skills to the test. It's a free event for anyone from 7 to 14 to compete, and the top players in each category were going to receive an award. On May 3rd, there's going to be a seniors Cinco de Mayo party at 1 p.m. at the Gilmore Senior Center. It's a free event. They have fun afternoon of Mexican festivities there. And then finally on May 4th is the El Dorado Hills Community Cleanup. It'll be from 8 to 2 p.m. at Hills Church. Anybody that lives in El Dorado Hills, it's free. Anybody that's a non-resident El Dorado Hills resident, they are charged $20 per load. So, and all this information is available on the supervisor's webpage. More information on that.
Very good, thank you. I'm going to cover the few remaining ones. Thriving economy. We have defined our new representative for District 1. His name is David Spar. He applied, he's got a ton of experience in economic development, so I'm going to welcome him onto what is now known as CDAC, but has been proposed to be called SEED. So we'll see how that transition goes. It's on the Board of Supervisors agenda tomorrow for approval. So assuming he gets approved, we're off and running. And so that fills the last vacancy, I believe, from a supervisor's perspective for that particular committee. I think there's still a couple of at-large members that are absent, but they're getting back to having a strong quorum and should be able to start conducting their business soon. Public infrastructure, I just mentioned that we're still in the process of looking at the county homeless navigation center. The Board of Supervisors committed to building a new facility. It's designed to be in the space that was previously the sheriff's office on the El Dorado County Offices campus. And that will free up then the current use of the facility that's being utilized for navigation center, which is the old juvenile treatment facility within the El Dorado County campus site, because there's moves that still have to take place there relative to hopefully turning that into a hospital type of setting for mentally ill, but subject to changes depending upon budget. So that was the original plan. I'm not sure that isn't changing with some of the budget considerations we've got going on right now, because to be perfectly honest, this is the fiscal year 24-25 budget, which George has been introduced to in great detail since he's on the ad hoc committee. Yeah, we're looking at reduced revenues, and obviously the demand for services always goes up. That never diminishes, but with reduced revenues, we've had to go back and ask the county staff, each department, to find places that they could either make additional savings or cuts in their budget. So we're working through all those things. We haven't arrived at the final position yet. There will be a presentation of the Board of Supervisors. I'm assuming it'll probably be our June meeting, but I don't know the specific date yet. That will go through that in detail, because that's where we set the preliminary fiscal year budget, and then we do a final in September. Once we have the closing of the books and we understand how much truly was carryover from the standpoint of what was budgeted but not expended, it can be carried over. And some monies can't be carried over. Some of them are controlled by state and federal regulations, but the ones we can carry over become carryover. And then sometimes the Board of Supervisors decides one-time expenditure of those carryover funds for something important like $5 million of road maintenance, which is what's been done in the past. But I don't know that that's going to be a viable alternative. In fact, I know $5 million probably isn't from where we are, but maybe we can find some money that can be used to continue trying to do more road maintenance and what the SB1 funds and other road funds will accommodate. So changes going on there. And then workforce excellence and strategic innovation, as I mentioned, there's nothing new to report there. I'm going to have to find out what meetings county employees have had, because I've not heard anything about them, but we'll need to follow up and figure out what their plan is.
Supervisor Kyle,
Yes.
I know I missed last month, but
Yes.
I'm watching. I'd love to be
I know.
input for the community input piece of that.
And I would love to
we've
see
not
that.
heard yet.
But they've said for right now, it's county employees only. So I guess they're trying to get their foundation established and what they're going to do,
I
their
just wanted to see
plan.
if I missed anything last month.
No, you didn't miss anything, but I'm hoping to eventually get them to open that up.
Enthusiastic support.
Because, yeah, there's a lot of good inputs I think that can be made that from people who've worked with the county in many different dimensions, that they don't necessarily see it from the same perspective as somebody outside observing things does. Because there's a lot of parochial, this is the way we do things, and versus, hey, there's some examples of things that might improve the overall performance, cost benefits, service improvements, whatever. And for the most part, if we can really embrace those, but we'll see what happens with that. So unless there's any questions or go back on anything related to that, I'm going to move to item 7. Any questions or go backs? Yes, go ahead.
I just want to say something. Bob's coming tomorrow for approval being my new planning commissioner. Just want to let you know. And it's really kind of funny how it was proposed, especially with that project up by the jail, is coming full circle, which I talked about that many years ago before this even started. So I think this is a better place for it. Beautiful.
And thank you for stealing them from APAC. Who's going to work now? I don't know.
I'll be back, John.
You'll have to recruit again, John, that's all. It's continual improvement.
What are you doing in 2025?
Continue recruitment.
Yeah.
You'll have to ask my wife.
Okay. Well, actually, what is she doing?
Good luck. She's serving as the Master Food Preservers President,
Yes.
has for several years, and is working with the food bank and has made some really great improvements. So, all right, so I'm gonna move to item 7, council member items. Our next meeting is Monday, May 6th at 5 p.m. So mark your calendars ahead of time. And as we've mentioned, the guest speaker, as far as I know, it's only gonna be Maya.
it is
Okay,
only her.
so it's only gonna be Maya, who will be here to talk about Marshall Hospital, their plans for opening the medical facility. Both Cindy and I attended their demolition kickoff meeting, and they had the wall marked with where the holes were gonna go for the sledgehammers to break through, and gold painted sledgehammers that were heavy duty. I wasn't able to stay around to watch the wall get busted up, but I assume that's what they did, right? Okay, all right. So my recollection is they said that they can only reuse about 20% of the existing tenant improvements within that shell, that 80% of it's got to be a total remodel. So they're not demoing the building, they're just taking out the tenant improvements, changing the floor space alignment for their needs with the 20%, I guess, to remain as is, but it's a pretty big project. And when you ask them how long it's going to take, several months before they're probably looking at having a open house, ribbon cutting, whatever, for the facility actually being improved and finalized and ready for occupancy. But we'll let Maya share whatever details she can on that. But we're all looking forward, hopefully, to that opening before the end of the year. But again, no guarantees, things happen, but that would be great to bring those resources to El Dorado Hills, where a lot of local services for seniors and others. And it kind of depends on your insurance program, whether they'll accept certain types of care. I know any kind of emergency care, if that's the way it's treated, can be done, but beyond that, some of the insurers don't want you to go anywhere but their facility. And as soon as the emergency situations, they'll transport you to their facilities. But at least for some residents of El Dorado Hills that are not tied into a given plan like Kaiser, you have some opportunities with PPOs and other things to pick who you want to go for service with reimbursement. But that's for Maya to share with us next month. And so with that, I'm not seeing any other final go back. So we are adjourned at 6:51 p.m. We beat our less than 2 hour commitment. Thank you all for your patience and attendance, and have a good week.
Oh,